We're just in the early months of 2024, and we're excited to see what other gems this year brings. We did one of these back in 2023, and now it's time for this year's edition. Today we'll be taking a look at just some of the movies that we're most hyped and excited for being released this year. We'll also be covering some honorable mentions and hugely anticipated titles. There will be a few movies that will be announced after the making of this video, but until then, here are our most anticipated movies of 2024. But before we dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tell us below which movies you're most excited for this year. Alright, let's jump in. Starting off our list, we have Joker 2, also known as Joker Folie à Deux. The first Joker, which came out in 2019, was a critical and commercial success, earning over $1 billion worldwide and winning numerous awards. The film was praised for its dark and gritty portrayal of the iconic Batman villain, Joker, as well as its exploration of themes such as mental illness, societal inequality, and the nature of identity. So it was no surprise when a second movie was announced. The plot is unknown at this time, but it was announced that Lady Gaga would be joining Phoenix in the movie, assumingly as the second lead. What's also really interesting about the movie is that it will partly be a musical, which is super unique to its plot. The original Joker was a monumental film and was beautifully dark and gritty, and it had a big impact on me the first time I saw it. I also remember the insane cultural impact it had. Everybody was talking about it, everyone I knew had seen it, and everybody loved it or was really affected by it, so much so that it was even causing controversy because of the acts that were taking place because of the movie. With Todd Phillips once again behind the camera, I'm excited to see how they'll continue Arthur Fleck's story from the first one and how they'll continue to incorporate the musical aspect of it. As long as they stay true to the character, this one is definitely one to look out for. The movie is expected to release in October. Next up, we have Roger Eggers' newest project, Nosferatu, which of course is based on the retelling of the original German movie from 1922, obviously with a new modern spin on it. When it comes to surrealism, Eggers is one of the best people working today. His unique works like The Lighthouse, The Witch, and The Northman made him someone to look out for. I thought The Lighthouse was one of the most unique horror movies I had seen in a long time, and I loved The Northman. So under his direction, the anticipation is completely real. The plot will follow the obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Bill Skarsgård will play Nosferatu, or Count Orlok. Skarsgård has the chops to play a creature like this, especially when looking back at his career, particularly him playing Pennywise the Clown in It. The movie will also star Willem Dafoe and Nicholas Hoult among others. Really intrigued and curious about this one and the vision he'll bring to the classic icon. We'll be waiting until December for this one to drop. Next up, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a highly anticipated movie that brings together two iconic characters from the Marvel comic universe, Deadpool and Wolverine. Both these characters have been fan favorites for so long, and now these two polar opposite characters are teaming up together. I've always thought the Deadpool movies have been quality entertainment, cheesy and annoying at certain times, but really well executed and super fun. So I'm really excited to see the story continued with another great comic book character, Wolverine. On paper, these two are extremely different from each other, one being a complete goofball and the other being gritty and serious brute. The teaser shows an action-packed and ridiculous addition to the series, which is no surprise for if you've seen Deadpool 1 or 2, so it should be a really fun ride. This one's expected to drop in July. Next up, we have MaXXXine with 3 X's. This one I'm really excited for. MaXXXine is the third movie in the X franchise by Ty West. Ty West first collaborated with Mia Goth in X, a great horror thriller from a few years back. After he made Pearl, the prequel to X, both were awesome movies and took me back to the horror movies of the 70s. And now rounding off is the third collaboration of this franchise with MaXXXine. The movie takes place after X and follows one of the survivors of the events of X on their adventure in Los Angeles in the 1980s. So if there's one thing I love more than unique horror movies is the 1980s aesthetic. With leather jackets, VHS's, 80s hits, I absolutely love the vibe. Match that with Ty West's vision and Mia Goth's excellent acting, and you have a winner. The movie also stars Giancarlo Esposito, Kevin Bacon, Lily Collins, Michelle Monaghan, and so many others. This is one I'm extremely excited for, and this one will be dropping in July. Next up, we have Megalopolis, a behemoth of a movie by the legendary Francis Ford Coppola. I'm more excited about this one for the premise and the vision from the man behind the Godfather movies and Apocalypse Now. The plot follows an architect who wants to rebuild New York City as a utopia following a devastating disaster. Alongside that, we have Adam Driver, Dustin Hoffman, Giancarlo Esposito again, Aubrey Plaza, Lawrence Fishburne, and Shia LaBeouf leading the charge for the cast, among a bunch of other actors and actresses. While we don't have much on the actual plot or anything else, I really like the sound of the plot and the premise and the big cast behind it. Definitely one to look out for in 2024, and currently the release date is unknown. Next up, we have the long-anticipated horror movie, Terrifier 3. As one of the most beloved and renowned indie horror flicks, Terrifier changed the game with the introduction of Art the Clown. The last two movies gained a cult following for their extreme gore and practical effects. I'm a fan of the character in the movies because of the way Damien Leone and his team have been able to push the envelope and get a new level of gore that I hadn't seen in a long time with such a small budget. And now with Terrifier 3 on the way, it's going to be awesome to see what they could do with the huge budget. The third iteration is going to be a Christmas-themed horror movie as Art the Clown completely wreaks havoc on a local town during Christmas, and it's set to be released in October. Whispers say that this one's going to be extremely controversial, so stay tuned. Next up, we have Inside Out 2. Inside Out brought a level of creativity and storytelling that is reminiscent of the old Disney. The Disney that didn't double down on pandering at the cost of good original creations. A Disney that valued the creative more than the profit, but that feels like a distant memory. I'll save the rant for another video, but back to Inside Out. The story follows Riley as she moves from her Midwest life to San Francisco. Her emotions, joy, fear, anger, disgust, and sadness conflict on how best to navigate a new city, house, and school. The larger-than-life adventure took us around a creative world on its own, with funny, wholesome, and even emotional scenes. Inside Out 2 is a direct sequel to its predecessor, and follows the same emotions as they try to navigate Riley's now teen life. Assuming they can keep the heart of the first film in full focus, we can expect another great story from Pixar and the Disney animation team. I think having the idea of emotions being their own characters has just been an awesome and really creative idea, especially for people of all ages. So taking that to another one, I hope they don't mess it up, but I really like the first one. Can't wait what they do for this one. Next up, we have A24's biggest movie yet, Civil War. I'm a big fan of A24's ambitious and surreal movies, and their phenomenal track record so far. The movie is set to be their biggest budget yet, and follows a journey across a dystopian future America, following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. On paper, this could be an exhilarating and suspenseful action drama. Now, I'm not a huge fan of pandering or on-the-nose rhetoric in movies that are focused on the political, so that will be something to look out for, but the trailer shows an interesting and suspenseful premise apart from that. Not sure if this one will end up hitting or not, but the trailer does get me excited, and I look forward to seeing what Alex Garland and A24 are able to do with it. Civil War will be dropping next month, so stay tuned. Next up, we have Eddington, Ari Aster's newest movie. Now, this one was just announced, so I'm not entirely sure if it'll be released this year. It might be released next, but I thought I'd include it on here. I think Ari Aster is one of the most unique visionaries out there, and I think his career has started off so well. With horror classics like Hereditary, Midsommar, and Beau is Afraid, his movies are impactful and unsettling in the best ways possible. His next movie is actually a contemporary western and falls in the same categories as Beau is Afraid: comedy, drama, and horror. Emphasis on the horror. The plot is currently unknown, but it has been announced that Austin Butler, Emma Stone, Pedro Pascal, and again Joaquin Phoenix are all tied to the project. Cannot wait for his next movie. He's just one of those directors now that having him attached to a project creates this aura of mystery and hype. So hoping it comes out this year, but who knows. Next up, we have Saw 11. I've always been a fan of the Saw series. The concept of justice serving engineer creating gruesome torture devices in an attempt to punish those who have done wrong puts a complete spin on what we think of protagonists. Perhaps one thing that's discussed a lot about the series is its longevity, all starting back in 2004, and now 20 years later we're still seeing the same movies come out of the franchise. Now, of course, there's been a variety of different timelines and prequels within the series, including the horrendous spin-off Spiral, and with all recent films in the series, it seemed to have succumbed to poor writing and direction. That is until Saw 10, which came out last year. it left us all thinking that not all hope is lost. Now, the movie was not perfect by any means, but it quenched the thirst of us Saw fans and was a really unique take, and I really enjoyed it actually. It did a lot of things right and restored a bit of faith on the otherwise dying franchise. That's why I'm really excited to see what they do with Saw 11. If they continue down this right path and stick with what fans know and love, then they'll be able to resurrect this series into something really awesome and really entertaining. So with that in mind, I'm really excited to see what they do with Saw 10. Speaking of horror movies, next up we have the sequel to one of my favorite horror movies of 2023, Smile. Despite the strange commercials, it turned out to be an incredibly smart and intriguing horror film that attempted to challenge the standard of horror tropes we see in most films. It followed an overworked psychiatrist Rose. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, she becomes increasingly convinced she's being threatened by an uncanny entity. Smile's use of smart, unorthodox camera scares and eerie soundtrack helped create a vibe like no other. Director Parker Finn's visionary approach infuses the narrative with a sense of urgency and unease, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. So when they announced the second movie, I was super excited, and I can't wait to see how they continue the entity and its terrifying transformations. If it's anything like the first, I know it's going to be one hell of a ride, and with the same director and team behind the camera, this may very well be the case. And to end off, here's a real quick rapid fire round of a few honorable mentions that people are excited for, that we should keep an eye on. Some of these I can see being great movies, but I'm not personally racing to the theater to go see them, but obviously this may change as they're released. So we'll have to keep an eye on these, but here goes. Furiosa, Venom, The Last Dance, Gladiator 2, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, A Quiet Place Day 1, and Borderlands. So let me know below which one of these movies on this list are you most excited to see. I'd love to hear it. And if you like this content, please be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with the latest videos just like this. All support is appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the theaters.